So if you ask like a Wall Street supercomputer to predict who's going to win the 2026 World Cup, you'd think it's just looking at the star strikers on the pitch, right?
Right, yeah, that would be the obvious assumption.
But it's actually not. To find the answer, this algorithm is calculating, well, the exact altitude of Mexico City. It's factoring in the psychological trauma of past tournament champions. And it's relying heavily on a chess ranking system that was invented back in the 1960s.
I know it seems completely counterintuitive at first glance. I mean, we usually expect high-level financial modeling to require, these sterile, predictable environments.
With perfectly clean data.
Exactly. But here, data scientists are deliberately pointing their precision tools straight into the eye of human chaos. They're basically attempting to find a mathematical signal inside a sport that is notoriously driven by unpredictable emotion.
Which is wild. So welcome to the deep dive, everyone. For you listening, we got this massive, incredibly dense research report on our desk today. It's from Goldman Sachs.
Yeah, it's a huge one.
It really is. It's titled World Cup 2026, Predictions, Probabilities, and Paths to Victory. And we are looking right down the barrel of an unprecedented tournament here.
Oh, absolutely unprecedented.
It spans the US, Canada, and Mexico from June 11 to July 19. And they've expanded the roster to 48 teams. I mean, that means 104 matches of pure, unfiltered football.
And honestly, the sheer scale of this tournament is precisely what makes a statistical model necessary in the first place.
Because it's just too big for a human to track.
Yeah, exactly. It represents the largest geographic footprint and the largest team pool in the history of the sport. I mean, you have 12 groups of 4, with the top 2 advancing alongside the 8 best third-place teams.
Oh, wow. So the math just gets crazy.
The permutation mathematics are totally off the charts. It makes traditional human prediction almost impossible.
Okay, so our mission today is to figure out the actual architecture behind these predictions. We are unpacking how Wall Street quants build a statistical model to predict a sports tournament of this magnitude.
Which is fascinating.
Right. We want to understand what their numbers say about who actually lifts the trophy in New York. And crucially, we need to explore what the data simply cannot account for.
Because there's always a blind spot.
Exactly. So before we look at who the model actually picks to win, we really have to understand the engine under the hood. Like, how do you turn a 90-minute emotional roller coaster of a football match into a cold mathematical equation?
Yeah, it's a huge challenge.
The report notes they fed this model a dataset of just under 20,000 mandatory international matches. And this dates all the way back to 1978.
Well, volume is really the only way to build statistical confidence. I mean, if analysts only look at the last 2 years, the sample size is way too small to differentiate true compounding skill from just a lucky streak.
Right, that makes sense.
But the really fascinating part is how they process those 20,000 matches. They use what's called a Poisson distribution.
A Poisson distribution.
Yeah. It's a mathematical concept designed to predict the probability of a given number of events happening in a fixed interval of time.
Okay, wait. I've definitely seen that term used in entirely different fields, like predicting traffic flow on a highway or like call center volumes. Why apply a Poisson distribution to a soccer game instead of just predicting a simple win, loss, or draw?
Well, because in football, goals are incredibly rare. They're these discrete events confined to a strict 90-minute window.
Right. It's not basketball.
Exactly. A model that merely predicts a binary win or loss totally misses the entire nuance of the game. So a Poisson distribution generates a comprehensive curve.
A curve.
Yeah. Based on underlying metrics, it calculates the precise probability of a team scoring exactly 0 goals, or exactly 1 goal, or exactly 2, and so on. It maps out the shape of all possible scores rather than just giving a single answer.
Okay, I get it. And the cornerstone metric feeding into that curve, like the variable determining how likely a team is to score, is the ELO rating system, right? Spelled ELO.
That's right.
But this wasn't designed for team sports at all.
No, not at all. It was actually originally devised to rank individual chess players.
Chess!
Yeah. The ELO system is a self-correcting zero-sum mathematical loop. Basically, when 2 teams play, the winner takes a calculated number of points from the loser, and the amount of points exchanged depends entirely on the pre-match ratings of those 2 teams.
Okay, so think of it like a competitive video game matchmaking rank. If you're like a mid-level player and you manage to beat a top-tier grandmaster, your rank skyrockets because you pull off a massive upset. You steal a ton of their points.
Exactly.
But if you beat a total novice, your score barely moves. The system expected you to win anyway, so the reward is minimal.
That's a really helpful way to visualize the point exchange, but, we have to recognize a massive caveat with the ELO system in this context.
What's that?
Well, video game rankings often reset every 7 to level the playing field, right? But the Goldman Sachs ELO system for these national teams carries decades of historical baggage.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, every match played since 1978 is baked into the current number. It's this continuous, unbroken chain of historical performance.
Which actually explains a really interesting discrepancy I saw in the report. The model's ELO rankings have Spain sitting at number 1 globally, followed by Argentina and France.
Right.
But that differs from the official FIFA men's world rankings. So the algorithm is basically trusting its own historical math over the governing body's current assessment.
Yeah, the quants argue their ELO rating is simply mathematically more robust, especially when you're attempting to measure the long-term compounding strength of a team over thousands of games.
Oh, okay.
The official FIFA rankings have historically faced a lot of criticism for heavily weighting recent friendly matches, whereas the ELO system kind of smooths out all that short-term noise.
I mean, I hear that, but chess is a game of perfect information. There are no hidden variables, no bad referee calls, no muddy pitches. Relying on a chess rating for an 11-on-11 contact sport, I don't know, it feels like it misses the actual human element of football entirely.
Oh, as a standalone metric, it absolutely would. I mean, chess pieces don't suffer from fatigue, they don't get stage fright, and they certainly don't lose confidence after missing a penalty kick.
Right, they're just pieces of wood.
Exactly, and that is exactly why the analysts only use the ELO rating as the baseline. It sets the foundation of the probability curve, but then they build several more layers on top of it to account for the physical and psychological realities of the sport.
Okay, let's dig into those layers then, starting with the most basic human element, talent on the pitch today. Because ELO tells us how strong the national team's jersey has been historically, but it doesn't know if the star striker just retired last month.
Right.
So how does the model actually measure the players?
Well, the model specifically targets elite scoring talent. It looks at the current rosters and tallies up the number of players on each national team who rank among the top 50 goal scorers in European club competitions.
Why specifically European clubs?
Because that's where the highest concentration of global talent plays. It provides a standardized baseline for attacking quality.
But they put a hard cap on this metric, which I found so strange. A team can only get credit for a maximum of 4 of these elite goal scorers.
Yeah, that's true.
So if a country somehow produced 10 of the best strikers in the world, the math just stops caring after player number 4. What if a team plays a highly attacking 4-3-3 system with really aggressive wingbacks pushing up into the box? Doesn't capping the talent metric Sort of artificially punish modern tactical setups?
It's a valid critique of the model's rigidity, for sure, but the analysts argue that historically, the marginal utility of adding a fifth elite goal scorer to the pitch diminishes really rapidly.
Because they just get in each other's way.
Pretty much. There's only one ball, A team's expected goals plateau because players start occupying the exact same attacking spaces. So the model restricts the variable to mirror a realistic starting lineup. It basically prevents a team from artificially inflating their probability curve just because they have a deep bench of strikers who won't even see the pitch at the same time.
Okay, yeah, that does make a lot of sense, actually. Then there's the question of current form. Because the model factors in momentum by looking at the goals scored by a team in their last 10 competitive matches and the goals conceded by their opponent in their last 5.
Right, and this is how the model bridges the gap between that historical ELO and present reality.
Okay, so it grounds it a bit.
Exactly. A team might have a massive ELO rating from this dominant run 3 years ago, but if they suddenly hit a wall and haven't scored in their last 10 games, that momentum variable acts as a severe drag on their predicted performance. It pulls the historical math back down to earth.
Now, here's a variable that genuinely surprised me. The model tries to actually quantify psychological baggage.
Oh, yes. This is fascinating.
The data shows a phenomenon they call the World Cup boost. Essentially, when the lights are brightest at the biggest tournament on Earth, major footballing nations consistently outperform their baseline metrics.
Yeah, the data reveals this very clearly with teams like Brazil, Germany, and Argentina. Their performance in a World Cup setting statistically exceeds what their ELO rating and talent metrics would predict for just a standard international friendly. The occasion just elevates their measurable output.
Except for one country.
Yes.
The model explicitly codes an exception for England. It singles out the English national team as the only major nation that does not receive this mentality boost. I mean, is the data actually confirming decades of heartbreak for English fans?
Well, the math strictly reflects the historical variance. It's not trying to explain the psychology behind it.
Right, that's not what.
Exactly. The data doesn't care if the underperformance is caused by intense pressure from the British tabloid media or tactical rigidity or just sheer bad luck. It simply registers that over decades, England has consistently underperformed relative to their immense talent pool and high ELO rating when they actually reach the World Cup stage.
It's just wild.
Yeah. The algorithm has to account for that recurring drop in performance to maintain accuracy, so it mathematically penalizes them. It literally quantifies historical heartbreak.
That is brutal to see written to Wall Street code.
It really is.
And speaking of psychological penalties, there's another major historical trend baked in here. The winner's slump.
Right. This is one of the most prominent patterns in modern international football. Historically, reigning champions suffer a massive drop in performance in the subsequent World Cup.
Like Germany in 2018.
Exactly. They crashed out in the group stages in 2018 after winning the whole thing in 2014. And Spain did exactly the same thing in 2014 after their 2010 victory. France was really the only recent exception, managing a strong run in 2022 after their 2018 win.
So because Argentina won the trophy in Qatar in 2022, the model just assumes they're going to hit this exact same historical headwind in 2026.
Yes, the algorithm treats the winner's slump as a highly probable negative variable for Argentina. And again, the data doesn't diagnose the cause.
It just knows it happens.
Yeah, right. It doesn't matter if the slump is caused by the heavy pressure of defending the title, or an aging squad holding on to past glory, or opponents simply playing with more intensity against the champions. The math just knows the slump happens, and it adjusts Argentina's probability curve downward.
Okay, so the model has a full grasp on the history, the talent, the momentum, and the psychology. But for this specific 2026 tournament, the physical environment introduces a massive wild card. I mean, we are talking about a geographical gauntlet across the US, Canada, and Mexico.
The footprint is staggering. And the model recognizes that travel and climate will play a much, much larger role than in previous, more centralized tournaments like Qatar.
Right.
So the analysts actually built in specific penalties based on the sheer geographic distance from a team's home capital to their assigned stadium. They also calculated deduction based on the absolute temperature difference between a team's home country and the match venue.
That's crazy. Imagine being a player whose entire professional career is adapted to, like, the cool sea level drizzle of London or Berlin. And suddenly, you were forced to sprint for 90 minutes in the intense heat and thin air of Mexico City.
Which brings us to perhaps the most aggressive geographic variable in the entire report, the altitude malus.
Right, and just to clarify, the word malus indicates a direct mathematical penalty applied to a team's expected goals.
Got it.
The algorithm calculates a specific deduction for countries with low average elevations that are scheduled to play in high-altitude stadiums. Mexico City sits at over 7,000 feet above sea level.
That's huge.
It is. The physiological disadvantage of lower VO2 max translates directly into a lower expected goal output in the model.
So how does that altitude penalty ripple into the later stages of the simulations? Does the data show it actively derailing a specific team's tournament run? It acts as a severe mathematical drag, particularly for European teams drawn into the Mexican venues. I mean, looking back at England again, the bracket projections show them highly likely to face Mexico in the knockout stages. In Mexico City.
Oh, wow. Talk about an uphill battle.
Exactly. You have a team adapted to low altitude, facing a host nation, completely acclimated to that exact environment. The model shows that off-pitch atmospheric reality fundamentally suppressing England's on-pitch probability of advancing.
Man. Okay, let's look at what happens when they actually fire up the engine. All the inputs are locked. They have the 20,000 matches of data, the ELO ratings, the top 50 club scores, the winner's slump, the altitude analysis, and they need to predict a 104 match bracket. The report says they use a Monte Carlo simulation. How does that methodology synthesize all these variables without just spitting out a single rigid bracket?
Well, remember that the Poisson distribution doesn't give us a single guaranteed score for a match, right?
Right, it gives a curve.
Exactly. It provides a curve of probabilities. A Monte Carlo simulation takes those curves and essentially plays the entire tournament out 50,000 times in a virtual environment.
50,000 times.
Yeah, and in each of those 50,000 simulated tournaments, the algorithm samples from the probability curves to decide the winner of every single match. This captures a massive range of potential realities.
And the model dynamically updates as it goes,
Yeah.
right? Like, the analysts emphasize that they recursively update ELO ratings and momentum variables over the course of each individual simulation.
Yeah, that recursive updating is really the core engine of the simulation. Like, if a dark horse team pulls off a massive upset in the group stage of simulation number 4000, the algorithm doesn't just stick to the pre-tournament numbers.
It learns from it.
Exactly. It recalculates the team's ELO rating and momentum variables in real time within that specific simulation. So their mathematical odds of winning their next simulated match in the round of 32 actually improve, because the math recognizes they are playing way above their baseline. The probability matrix shifts dynamically with every simulated final whistle.
That becomes incredibly important because of the expanded format. I mean, there are 495 possible pairings in the newly introduced round of 32 alone. So let's look at the actual bracket the supercomputer generated as the single most probable outcome. Early on, it projects some heavily charged matchups, the US facing off against Iran, and a massive South American clash between Argentina and Uruguay.
But the real shock comes in the round of 16. Out of those 50,000 simulations, the most frequent outcome is Germany getting eliminated by France very early in the knockout stages.
But Germany has an incredibly strong squad. Are we seeing that a team's statistical probability of winning the World Cup is dictated just as much by the luck of the tournament draw as it is by the talent on their roster?
Honestly, the data strongly supports that conclusion. The analyst ran a separate, isolated scenario where they completely randomized the group draws to see how much the specific bracket structure altered the final probabilities.
And what happened?
The result was stark. They found that Germany was mathematically the single unluckiest team in the entire tournament. Their assigned path almost inevitably forces a collision with France.
Meanwhile, Argentina gets a massive boost just from their geographic placement in the bracket.
Oh, totally. Argentina was deemed the luckiest top-tier team in those randomized tests. Their path is relatively clear of the highest-rated European powerhouses until the very late stages. The architecture of the draw dictates the probability curve just as heavily as the players do.
Moving deeper into the simulation, the quarterfinals give us a classic England versus Brazil matchup. It also projects a potential last dance scenario, Argentina versus Portugal. That implies a 39-year-old Lionel Messi squaring off against Cristiano Ronaldo one final time on the world stage.
Yeah, and the simulations show Brazil and Argentina advancing from those respective quarterfinals, setting the stage for the final four.
So when the dust settles on all 50,000 Monte Carlo runs, the overall probabilities for who wins the entire tournament shake out clearly. Spain emerges as the favorite with a 26% chance of winning. France is right behind them at 19%. Argentina holds 14%. Brazil sits at 8%. And England trails with a 5% probability.
And that 26% for Spain is a dominant statistical lead in a field of 48 teams. It's heavily driven by their position at the very top of the ELO rankings. I mean, they sit a full 84 points ahead of France in the model. Combine that with top-tier scoring talent and the fact that they don't carry any of the winner slump baggage that drags down Argentina, and the math just heavily favors a Spanish victory.
The model projects the ultimate climax of Finalissima in New York on July 19th. It predicts the reigning European champion, Spain, taking on the reigning South American champions, Argentina, and the supercomputer predicts Spain lifts the trophy. The report even notes the poetry of the outcome, a symbolic passing of the torch from a 39-year-old Messi to Spain's teenage phenom Lamine Yamal, who turns 19 just days before the final.
And the prediction also aligns perfectly with a long-standing historical macro trend that the algorithm identified. The World Cup trophy almost always returns to a European nation after being won by a South American team. The only time in history that pattern broke was when Brazil secured back-to-back victories in 1958 and 1962.
It is an incredibly convincing, highly logical picture of how a wildly chaotic month of football will unfold. But the grass isn't made of math. Spreadsheets don't play the games,
Right.
What do the Goldman Sachs analysts admit their multi-million-dollar model cannot see?
To their credit, the authors are completely transparent about the model's blind spots. The most glaring issue is defensive blindness.
Defensive blindness.
Yeah. The algorithm expertly measures attacking talent by scraping the data for top European club goal scorers, but it is largely incapable of quantifying elite non-attacking talent.
So if a team has an impenetrable backline, a midfield duo that completely controls the tempo of the game, or a goalkeeper who just transforms into a brick wall during a penalty shootout, the model just doesn't grasp the value of those players.
It misses them almost entirely. The data simply cannot easily assign a numerical value to defensive depth or a keeper's heroics. Furthermore, the model is completely blind to unquantifiable human variables. It cannot measure the impact of managerial experience.
Oh, like if a legendary tactician takes over a struggling squad.
Right. The algorithm doesn't recognize the tactical upgrade.
It also can't predict individual health or localized momentum. Like if Lamine Yamal tweaks an ankle a week before the tournament, or if half the French squad comes into the World Cup riding a massive wave of confidence after winning the Champions League together at their club, the algorithm is completely oblivious.
Exactly. Which is why the report frankly admits that the model's historical correlation to actual tournament results is only 49%. The other 51% of the time, reality just deviates from the algorithm's predictions.
I mean, a 49% correlation means it's wrong more often than it's right. If the model literally cannot account for a legendary goalkeeper having the game of his life and misses the mark over half the time historically, shouldn't we view these one-street predictions as a fun academic exercise rather than a serious forecast?
Well, I think it depends entirely on how you define a successful forecast in sports. I mean, in structural engineering, sure, a 39% correlation would be an abject failure. Buildings would be falling down.
Right.
But in a highly unpredictable, low-scoring sport where a single gust of wind can alter the trajectory of a ball, predicting nearly half of the historical variance is an incredibly powerful signal. We have to remember the 51% error rate includes statistical anomalies like Saudi Arabia snapping Argentina's 36-game unbeaten streak in the 2022 group stages.
Nobody saw that coming.
No algorithm on Earth predicted that outcome because it was a statistical lightning strike.
Yeah, that makes sense. The Goldman Sachs model is designed to find the underlying signal, even if it can't predict every single lightning strike. The architecture of the prediction is brilliant, but the chaos of the sport still holds the final say.
It really does. Which leaves us with a fascinating philosophical question to consider for you listening. As data models and artificial intelligence become exponentially more sophisticated, as they learn to map every single human variable, every altitude change, and every historical mentality trend with perfect precision, will our ability to mathematically solve sports fundamentally change how we enjoy watching them? If the absolute unpredictability of the beautiful game becomes perfectly predictable, is it still beautiful?
That is the ultimate tension between the algorithm and the pitch. Adding this video is for research and analysis purposes only and does not constitute any investment advice. Subscribe to this channel. Next episode will be even more exciting.